Hi everybody. Today we're going to go on a bit of a ramble. I'm going to talk about three things kind of loosely and hopefully tie them together in some way, probably forced. Those three things are work, water, and nesting. My old writing teacher, Lucille Berlin, used to say, when we write, we go to a place where only we can go. Of course, she meant that spiritually, artistically, psychologically, but I also like to think she meant it physically. I've always been a lover of studies, even when I didn't have one. This writing shack behind my house was inspired by you-know-who from the last lecture. It's really not a shack, but a shack boat, as below it there are 22 boogie board flotation devices so it can rise on the high tide. Anyway, it is my kind of womb for work in the evenings. Here's where I come down and try to kind of make a nightly ritual of work. I have a morning work schedule, which is getting up early, going to my desk and feeding the dogs, drinking coffee, stretching my back. And I've found over the years, over 30 years or so of doing that dailiness is a kind of superpower that you can have too. I have grad students who seem to think that it has to be late October and rainy and they have to be listening to Neil Young to be inspired. What I've discovered is that the kind of repetitiveness, the Groundhog Day-like factor of writing every day allows the words to come. And I think most people who do this, who practice dailiness, find that too. I mean, the idea is to create a kind of womb for work, right? And to create a place you go to where, as Montaigne said, the conversation is between me and myself. Another phrase that came to me this week is kind of a monk to the work. We practice this ritual. As you can imagine, this particular time, at this particular time, with all the chaos, all the pain, all the suffering, it's very helpful to have a couple hours a day where you can concentrate and discipline yourself to go away from the chaos of the world. I said my second theme was water. If you look over here, you see this poster of the Wilmington area watersheds. Let's see. My creek is right here, Hewlett's Creek. And if we follow the Cape Fear River down, we see that it meets with the Atlantic. Actually, at the Cape Fear, this kind of tumult of water crashing into each other, and there's an energy to it, an excitement. Here's Masonboro Island, the barrier island that I can paddle out to from my creek. I bring up water as kind of the opposite of work. Work has an everydayness to it. It has a steadiness to it. And water for me has always had a wildness, something that undermines what I just called the regularity and normality of the work, and something that excites. This out here is my water. It's low tide, so you can't see it very well. Hewlett's Creek, but it connects me to the world. If I go downstream, I go toward that island I just showed you on the poster, toward the Atlantic, and I'm connected to the world that way. And if I go upstream toward Wade Park, I can actually walk or kayak close to the source of Hewlett's Creek. This might be an interesting thing for you to do right now, to get some old maps, to even use Google Maps, and look for the body of water closest to you, and to just think about it, to map it, your home place. Which brings me to nesting. If you look out there, I don't know how well you can see it, you'll be able to see the osprey platform I built right before we started self-quarantining. And the hope is that some young birds are going to come back to it still, even though it's almost mid-April. The older birds, the vets, come back around here in early March, mid-March. And ospreys are long-lived birds and they can live into their 20s. and they come year after year to the same nest. They're committed to each other for the most part. They're called mostly monogamous. We'll let that stand. But the young birds, when they first come back, they practice. Ooh, look at that! A great blue heron going right by the osprey nest. They practice housekeeping, which is kind of their going through the motions of creating a nest, even if they don't have young. And that's what we're hoping to get there. So how does that tie in? Well, obviously it ties into water, since these are water-loving birds. But I guess for me it's about kind of being forced by this time to explore what's close to home. Our backyards, our houses, our family, and it's a smaller circle perhaps than what we're used to. We're used to more expansive ways of being. But we can turn that into learning our place, learning our home, learning our waters, and to kind of understand that there's a beauty in nesting too. I'm well aware that not everybody has access to the natural world like this, and I'm well aware that many are suffering, including those in my family, and I would hardly try to make it seem like an idyllic time. But for writers, quarantine is a way of being, pulling inward. And since I'm addressing you writers, if you can during this time, you want to practice rooting down, nesting down. I've let this run even though you can probably hear the construction noises in the background. My thinking is that's how the world is, right? It intrudes upon us. We can try to create that bubble, that room for work, but particularly in this world, we're never going to quite have it. But for us, there's only the trying, said T.S. Eliot, and so we're going to try to do that, try to create our routine, try to nest, try to know our place, and maybe I pulled those things together. I probably didn't, but onward.